What have I done? He noticed my phone buzzing on our dinner date, snatched it, and caught my affair. I've never been in this type of messy situation before. I've just put myself in a very big problem, and I'm at the verge of losing my marriage. My husband suggested we go on a date, but it ended in a bad way. My affair partner kept sending me messages while I was on a date with my husband. He got curious and snatched the phone from me. I was surprised by his actions, and honestly, I didn't see it coming. My name is Daniela. I'm 27 years old. The name of my husband is James. He is 29 years old. My husband and I have been together for 7 years, but currently we're in the process of getting a divorce as a result of my infidelity. I've been cheating on my husband for quite a while now, and I feel so guilty thinking about it. I never for a day imagined that things would get out of hand and I will have to go through this fate. I didn't think that my husband would be the one to find out that I was cheating on him. What even made it painful was the fact that he found out on the date he organized just for the both of us. I'm here to let you all know about this and just hope that someone who reads this would have an idea as to how I can save myself and my marriage from this. To say that I'm desperate is an understatement, guys. I urgently need advice from you all. James is a nice guy and also a good husband. I don't blame anyone for my infidelity, not even James, because I am old enough to know what's good and what's bad. But nevertheless, James somewhat had a hand in this. James barely has time for both of us. It's not like the nature of his job requires more time though, but he chose to be nonchalant about us. Sometimes I wonder if he does it on purpose. Apparently, James is a gynecologist. His work doesn't take long hours, but James always comes back home late at night. Sometimes he does hang out with his friends, but doesn't usually come home to spend time like normal couples do, or even go out together. I tried to always come back home early from work so as to have some time with my husband, but James is not always around. His nonchalant behavior towards our marriage made me stop liking him. It seemed like I was the only one that was putting effort into making our marriage work. I also didn't like the fact that he always spent more time outside than he spent at home. But thinking about it, guys, I regret my actions and I wished I never went down that path because right now I'm currently dealing with a lot of things. One of those is my affair partner. Right now, he's currently not picking my calls or replying to any of my text messages. Frankly speaking, guys, I hate him right now and everything about him. I cannot believe that he did this to me after the time we both had spent together. Does it mean that all of those times meant nothing to him or he just used me to have fun? My life and everything that I have worked for is crumbling in pieces right in front of me. I take full responsibility for my actions. James not spending time with me isn't enough reason to cheat on him. I should have spoken up but kept assuming that he was cheating on me, which he wasn't. At some point I did tell him about it, but my husband just shrugged it off like it's nothing. He made me look like I was a mad wife. So guys, I couldn't continue to deal with this nonchalant behavior that my husband had developed. I got tired and frustrated. Our first few years of being together wasn't like this. I honestly did not know what changed all of a sudden. The sudden change made me seek attention elsewhere, so I cheated on him. I got the attention I was crazily begging my husband for. I started going out with an old friend from my neighborhood when I was living with my parents. His name is Henry. Henry was a year older than me, and he was one of the most handsome guys in our neighborhood back then. Henry and I lost contact after our graduation in high school, and we got connected back a few months ago. One day, while I was heading out from the house, I saw a familiar face conversing with someone I didn't know. I drove closer and saw that it was Henry, my old-time crush and neighbor. Yes, guys, I once had a crush on him way back. I quickly parked and went down to say hello. I called out to him because I knew he was the one. Immediately, Henry turned around to see who it was. From the look on his face, Henry was surprised and shocked to see me. We both ran and hugged each other. I was so happy that I got to meet my longtime friend. Henry also expressed his excitement and we talked for a while before he proposed for us to go have a conversation elsewhere. At that moment, I postponed whatever I wanted to go and get and went to a nearby restaurant with Henry. We indeed had such a nice time together. Henry collected my number and promised to give me a call that evening. When I got home that day, Henry called like he promised, chatted for a few minutes before we hung up on each other. Of course, I had the number saved on my phone and we talked from that day onward. Henry and I started chatting for a few weeks, telling each other about how our day went. Honestly, guys, we also called and texted for late hours and sometimes Henry came visiting to keep me company. So guys, that was how Henry and I became so close that we started going on dates together secretly. Yes, guys, I told Henry that I was married but didn't know James, so we kept our relationship private. He wasn't able to attend our wedding at the time we were about to wed because we lost all forms of communication. So moving forward, this secret meeting went on for a couple of months and it felt like I was getting myself back. I forgot I was even married for a long time due to how James was treating me. Henry gave me all the attention I was begging James for. I felt happy because I never thought that someone could actually listen to me or give me the quality attention I was longing for a long time. I began to think Henry was the one for me, and gradually I forgot about James. So guys, James and I were like a total stranger in the house. We would wake up in the morning and go our separate ways to work. Before I started dating Henry, I was always telling James about his sudden change, but all went on deaf ears. Anytime I tried complaining, it made me look like I was the mad one. I didn't want to lose my sanity, and I stopped complaining. At that time, I made up my mind that I wouldn't waste my time in fixing a marriage that the other party wasn't putting an effort into. All I wanted was the attention and to be loved by my husband. James wasn't the only busy one I was. In fact, if we were to talk about who was to be more busy, then it's definitely going to be me because I worked in a producing industry that requires long hours and shifts. But I still tried my best to come back home early and render my duty as a wife. Duty, I mean cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the house. All other things weren't included. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. Even though my reasons for cheating are not enough, I know that James has a lot of faults in it. Let's say maybe he thought I was okay, but didn't know that I was feeling lonely and needed the love of my husband. That was what he failed to see and didn't care to ask if everything was all right with me. So guys, the time that James finally decided to take me out, that time it was already too late. I had cheated on him with Henry already. He didn't know that I was seeing someone else, or rather someone else was giving me the attention that I needed. But thinking about it right now, I terribly regret everything and I wish I could turn back the hands of time. I want to make things right with him again, and I just hope he finds a way to forgive me. After the incident on our date, I couldn't get hold of myself. The reality of everything dawned on me instantly. I watched my husband acting cold towards me. He forgot for a second that I was his wife. You all needed to see the look on his face. It was terrifying. I couldn't even look him in the eyes to say anything. I ran out of words and didn't know where to hide my face. Everyone at the restaurant was literally staring at us, and those that cared to listen stayed back, even though they were done eating. I never thought that the date I yearned for so many months could be the one to end my marriage. How I wished that Henry didn't call me at that moment. I wouldn't blame him because it wasn't his fault. He called at the wrong time. But the aftermath of the whole situation is what is angering me. Henry denied me like he never knew me. To think that I went to see him and explained everything after the whole scenario that happened at the restaurant, and the cold shoulder he gave is what is paining me the most. I thought maybe he would be compassionate enough to even let me in or pretend to care, but I got the opposite of my expectations. I trusted him. That was the mistake I made. I shouldn't have. And now I am reaping the consequences of what I sowed. Everything that I have worked for in my marriage is crumbling right in front of me. I know you all would be curious to know how everything came to play and what actually happened, right? Well, I will tell you all about it now. Apparently, James noticed that I wasn't nagging or complaining about his sudden change for a while, and so he decided to surprise me. It was a few days ago. I was at work when he called to tell me that he wanted to show me something. Coming from James at that time, I was very anxious to know what it was because it was unlike him. At that time, I could count the number of times he called me at work, and what even made me anxious was the fact that he had something to show me. So guys, I quickly packed my things and headed home. While I was on my way, I kept thinking about it. I eventually got home and opened the door. When I entered, I saw James seated on the couch. He must have probably been waiting for me. I apologized for taking so much time to come back home, but he got up from the couch and pecked me. He told me that he wasn't angry, and in fact, I made it on time. At that moment, my heart was beating so fast that I got goosebumps on my body. I thought maybe I was dreaming and wanted a confirmation that I wasn't. What even got me surprised was the thing James said next. Guess what, guys? James told me that he wanted us to go on a date at a nearby restaurant. That statement actually made me wonder if James was the one standing right in front of me. I was shocked and was also surprised at the same time. I was quiet for a few seconds before thinking if this was really my husband, James. I thought maybe he must have been swapped or hit his head on the wall that made him ask that. I wasn't expecting that from James, and honestly, guys, I was very surprised. I was deep in my own thoughts when my husband tapped me. I quickly recomposed myself and nodded my head in agreement. James hugged me and said we should head out immediately, but I told him that I wanted to freshen up and change into something nice before leaving. He agreed, and I went upstairs. While I was in the bathroom, I was very happy and excited that my husband had finally decided for us to go on a date. It was something I was yearning for so long and was happy that it was happening already. Just when I was about to shower, I remembered Henry. I felt a little bit of guilt and had mixed feelings. I became moody knowing what I did. I thought of how my husband would feel if he learned about my infidelity with Henry. It was as if karma came knocking at the wrong time. I stopped thinking about it and had my shower. After a few minutes, I came downstairs to meet James. He was very calm and didn't complain. James complimented my dressing and told me I looked beautiful in it. I couldn't look at him because I had a sense of guilt in me. I kept thinking about the dirty thing I did with Henry. But at that time, I decided to stop thinking about it and enjoy the moment. James held my hand and we left the house. So guys, we went to a nearby restaurant not too far from the house. It was a nice fancy place. Usually couples come there to have a lunch or dinner date there. I felt special that James brought me there. It was so thoughtful of him to have proposed a lunch date for us and also hang out together. We headed to a table and we sat down waiting for someone to come take our orders. While we were waiting, James began apologizing for neglecting me all this while. He told me that it wasn't deliberate, that he got overwhelmed with work. He poured his heart out and apologized frantically. I was amazed by what James said and was also happy that he had realized he was wrong. I was literally blushing and smiling at the same time. To say that I was happy is an understatement, guys. I was literally over the moon, to say lol. A few minutes later, someone came to our table to take our order. One thing that I loved about the restaurant was the way and manner they received us. Everything was well put and the staff were well mannered. The atmosphere was pleasant. I loved everything about the restaurant. James really knows how to treat a woman well when it comes to going on a date. I looked through the menu and placed my order. James ordered the same thing with me. LOL. It took a while before our orders arrived. Before it came, James and I were sipping on the glass of wine just to pass away time. At that moment, I totally forgot about Henry. All I was thinking was how to enjoy the moment and was also thinking about what to say if James learns about it himself. I didn't want to ruin the moment, so I stopped thinking and concentrated more on James. He looked very handsome. When the orders finally arrived, we started eating. This is where it gets interesting to you all reading this. I honestly did not know that the date that I was yearning for so long would send me parking. When James and I started eating, my phone beeped twice. Honestly speaking, guys, at that time I wasn't expecting any messages or calls from anyone. All that I was thinking about was James and the date we were on. Immediately, I took my phone to see the message. Of course, it was Henry. The first two messages were about my welfare. I read it and didn't text back so as to not disrespect my husband. I dropped my phone and continued eating my food. James didn't notice anything. He was focused on his food. A few seconds later, my phone was buzzing again. I ignored it and didn't reply to the message. But at this time, my husband was interested to know what was going on. James asked if everything was okay, which I said yes. But from the look on James's face, I knew he didn't buy that response, but he nodded in agreement. At that moment, I was already feeling uncomfortable. I was pissed that Henry had to text me at that odd hour. The thought of switching my phone didn't cross my mind. If not, I would have done that. The messages kept on coming, and so I took my phone to see what he had sent this time. I took my phone to take a slight glimpse of it before muting it. It was this time that James said I should reply to who the texter was, so as to not keep the person waiting. But I told him that there would be no need for that, and so we continued eating and I dropped my phone. The messages stopped for a few minutes before my phone started buzzing again. Before I could take a look at it, James quickly took it and said he would like to see it. It was then that James saw Henry's name. He was curious to know who the texter was because I didn't save Henry's number with the usual name. The name attracted his attention, and so he opened the messages. Apparently, I had saved Henry's number as Pia. When my husband opened the messages, he asked who Pia was and why she was asking if I could come over to our usual hotel and have fun because she was missing me. James was curious, and he immediately asked if at all I was gay. Immediately, I told him I wasn't. I asked him to give me back my phone, but he refused and proceeded to read the other messages. At that moment, I already knew that I was finished. Every message he read, he would shake his head and say something interesting. After reading everything, James gave me my phone back. I was scared and was waiting to see his reaction. If I knew it, James gave me a very loud slap. It was so loud that it attracted attention and at the same time was very painful. He then got up from his seat and came to where I was seated. He dragged me up from my seat and angrily asked me to tell him who is Pia, or else he would give me another slap. But this time, it would be more painful. I started stuttering and didn't know what to say. Everyone was already looking in our direction. I was very surprised and shocked to see James acting that way. In our years of marriage and relationship, I have never seen him that angry before. It was his dangerous side I didn't know about, and I was the one that awakened it. James dragged me out from inside the restaurant to outside the restaurant. Everyone was already staring at us. The passersby also stopped to watch. James yelled at me and told me awful things. He also made it clear that I shouldn't bother coming back home because I would hate myself if I dared to. So guys, I need your advice about this. Right now I feel ashamed of myself. The embarrassment from James at the restaurant was too cold. I wish I could erase that memory from my head. Also, I regret what I did, and I hope that James will take me back. I would be in the comments section to read what you all have to say about this. I know you all would judge me, and I'm ready to be judged, but please no nasty comments. Update. Hi guys, I'm back to complete my story, but before I continue, I want to officially say that I am now a divorced woman. Yes guys, my husband and I have officially parted ways. The last time I was here, I told you all that I and my husband were in the process of getting a divorce. Well, all efforts to make things right went in vain. James had his mind made up to divorce me. Even after I went over to the house to plead with him, but he gave me a cold shoulder and didn't think twice before sending me out. I was disgraced twice. One was at the restaurant and the other was at the house. Apparently, I pleaded with my parents to go with me and talk to James, but they bluntly turned it down. Most especially my dad. He is vigorously against infidelity. When they refused, I went over to a relative of ours, my aunt. She had pity on me and she volunteered to go with me. But she told me that I shouldn't expect anything and take whatever that comes from it because no man would accept to live with a cheater. I felt ashamed hearing those words. Of course, no man in his right senses would want to be with a cheating partner. So guys, my aunt and I went over to the house to plead with James. But guess what, guys? James didn't give us a listening ear. Even if he didn't want to hear anything I had to say, he should have at least heard from my aunt. I was too embarrassed that I had to cover my face. I apologized to my aunt for bringing her into the mess I created. My aunt was compassionate and didn't judge me or yell at me for disgracing her. James made us leave the house and was yelling on top of his voice. His voice was so loud that it attracted the neighbors. All the neighbors that cared to listen came over and my ex-husband didn't disappoint. He narrated everything to them. I wouldn't blame any of them because I was the one that put myself in that disgraceful position. Who wouldn't want to watch a thing like that or even want to listen or know the full story? Absolutely anyone would want to. At that moment, I knew that there was nothing left. James had already made up his mind to not let me in. I ran into the car, leaving my aunt at that side. The scene was so embarrassing that I had to leave. The side comments and the painful words pierced into my soul. I cried bitterly. My aunt came to join me and we left the place. When I got home, I didn't think twice before signing the divorce papers. I signed it and sent it back to him. The embarrassment was too much and I kind of deserved it. I guess bad things happen to bad people, and at the end of the day, I should have seen it coming. Thank you all for reading this awful experience of mine.